I'm going to give you start, sit verdicts and rankings for every single running back for week 1 so that you know what to do with your fantasy football lineup and you're not losing to your friends at fantasy football. Let's start with the first matchup of the NFL season, the Dallas Cowboys versus the Philadelphia Eagles. Now, Javonte Williams and Miles Sanders obviously being the backs for the Dallas Cowboys running back room has been pretty wide open there, but we expect Javonte Williams to get the majority of the first team carries out of the gate, and so he is going to be somebody that I think we're going to start this week, especially in flex spots. He's a great flex start this week. We have him in the F tier this week for our running back rankings, and then Miles Sanders, somebody that we are probably not going to start. I'm going to say sit on Miles Sanders. He's going to be in the I tier. Again, we're still going to rank him because it technically is a wide open running back room there in Dallas. However, all signs point to this Dallas Cowboys room being run by Javonte Williams, at least for the time being. And when you're looking at the matchup, the Eagles allowed the second least amount of points to running backs this last year in fantasy football. The Cowboys obviously haven't had a good rushing offense. And the Vegas line for this one, the implied points for Dallas are not great. And so we're not going to start multiple backs in this offense. Javonte Williams gets a spot start here, though, in their flex spots. And then Philadelphia, we've got Saquon Barkley, obviously going to be our first guy in the S tier here. He is going to be somebody that you're probably starting week in, week out because you drafted him in the first round. You should start everybody you draft in the first round. The handcuff right now is Will Shipley, and I think until Saquon Barkley goes down, there's no reason to rank Will Shipley. When you're looking in terms of matchup, the Dallas Cowboys were middle of the road last year in terms of allowing points to running backs, about 9th in the league, actually. They allowed the 9th most, so a little bit on the higher end there. But the Vegas light for this one, obviously, is green. You're going to start Saquon, doesn't matter. And so you're starting Saquon Barkley, not starting Will Shipley or Miles Sanders, though, in this particular matchup. And then we have a Friday game. The Friday game is new for this year, and I'm glad they have a Friday game because I can't get from Friday to Sunday on this weekend normally. It just drives me nuts. But it's Kansas City and the Los Angeles Chargers. And so we'll start with Kansas City. The starting running back there right now is Isaiah Pacheco. Pacheco is somebody we're going to have in the D tier for this week. This is not a great matchup for Isaiah Pacheco off the bat with the Los Angeles Chargers because when you're looking at the Chargers, they allowed the 5th least amount of points last year to running backs. Not to mention when you're looking at the Kansas City offense last year, almost none of their running backs were productive. And so we are going to have to see, and Isaiah Pacheco is going to have to prove that he can come in and be productive in that offense. Now, even though it's a bad matchup, we are, of course, starting Isaiah Pacheco because you drafted him in the 5th, 6th round, and you drafted him to start him, so we're going to be doing that. Kareem Hunt is the backup there right now. We've got him in the I tier, and I'm going to say we're not starting Kareem Hunt this week. He's going to be a sit for us. We do have him ranked, but in terms of, that Kansas City backfield, I'm going to start Pacheco and nobody else until we kind of figure out what the rotation there is. And then on the LA side, this is my guy, Omarion Hampton. We have Omarion Hampton in the C tier this week. It's his first week in the NFL. He's a rookie, so we're going to be a little bit cautious with him. However, don't be surprised if he gets most of the carries, if he comes out and absolutely dominates. That being said, the Kansas City Chiefs, we're talking about bad matchups, have allowed the least amount of points last year in the NFL to running backs. And so not a great matchup for Omarion Hampton in his first game. However, he should be getting the majority of the snaps. Najee Harris, the backup there, is going to be playing this week. We have him ranked in the H tier. Not somebody that I'm going to want to start this week. I'm going to say Najee is a sit as well. I don't think he's going to do very well. He hasn't been practicing. He hasn't really been at training camp for the last couple weeks. And I also believe that Omarion Hampton is the running back one there. And so I've got Omarion Hampton as a start this week and Najee Harris as somebody that we are going to sit as well. And if you want access to all of these start sit rankings, and actually if you want us to just send you a start sit verdict for your entire roster with our new weekly algorithm that we just came out with, you can access the weekly algorithm at flockfantasy.com/domain. If you use code domain and sign up for the season pass, then we'll actually just send you what your lineup should be every week with all of the lights. Our green lights are, of course, matchup light, offense light, Vegas light. Tells us the 3 factors we're looking at when we're looking at start sit decisions, and we can just customize it for your team and send it to you every week. So if you'd like to access that, code domain on flockfantasy.com/domain, we can get that over to you. Let's jump over now to the Tampa Bay Atlanta game, which should be happening on Sunday. Now, Tampa Bay obviously has Buck Irving and Rachaad White. Buck Irving becomes an A-tier starter because it's really where you drafted him, and it's what we expect. He was listed as the running back 1 on Tampa Bay's depth chart this week, and he's somebody that you are absolutely going to start this week. And Rachaad White's somebody that we're going to put in the F tier. He's a meh at best, probably a sit. And so we're probably not going to look to start Rachaad White this week. When you're looking at the matchups for these guys, both of these teams last year were pretty solid against running backs. And so, matchups are not great. Yellow lights for both matchups here for Atlanta and Tampa Bay. The offenses, both yellow. It's pretty much yellow across the board. So Bucky and Bijan. Bijan, we've got in the S tier for this week. We're starting both of the starting running backs in this game. In terms of the backups, Rachaad White in the F tier and Tyler Algier in the G tier. Not really super high on starting either of those guys. I'm going to say both of those guys are sits for this week. We're not going to start those guys in our flex spots if we can handle it. Most everybody has the flex spot depth to not start Rachaad White and Tyler Algier this week. And again, pretty good matchups on both sides defensively, and so we'll see how that one ends up going. Let's pivot to the Cincinnati and Cleveland game now. Obviously, Chase Brown is somebody that we are starting this week. However, we do have him in the B tier because when you're looking at the Cleveland Browns defense last year against running backs, they allowed the third least amount of points to running backs in fantasy football. And so he is a little bit more of he has a tough matchup this week, but obviously somebody you're starting no matter what, right? Samaje Perine, somebody we don't have ranked right now, is only going to be one startable running back in that offense until further notice. And then on the Cleveland side of the ball, Bengals were right. Their defense sucks, but their run defense was right in the middle of the road in terms of allowing points. Their pass defense, their secondary is where it really got ugly last year. And so Jerome Ford, we do have as a start in the F tier, as well as Dylan Sampson in the G tier. I'm going to say both of these are meh starts. They're both guys you can start this week, but you are risking that one of them is going to take all the work and the other one doesn't get any production. I don't know whether it's going to be Jerome Ford or if it's going to be Dylan Sampson. Now, obviously, we have Jerome Ford ranked above Dylan Sampson. I think we're going to give the nod to the veteran in week 1, and so maybe you go start Jerome Ford, for Dylan Sampson. But I do think that these guys are going to be a little bit risky in week 1 just because you don't know who's going to get the work there. So that's kind of the story of that game. Miami and Indianapolis. Of course, we got Devon Achane. This is a very good matchup for Devon Achane. The Colts, they allowed quite a bit of points to running backs last year. He's an A-tier guy. Ollie Gordon is also going to be an H-tier guy for this week, the backup running back there, because we have seen backup running backs in Mike McDaniel offenses have good fantasy production. So we're going to keep that in mind as we rank Ollie Gordon. And then Jonathan Taylor, of course, I already said A tier. And then Tyler Goodson's the running back 2 there. And again, we can't start 2 running backs in Indianapolis until further notice as well. Same kind of deal there. Okay, Carolina and Jacksonville. Let's start with Chuba Hubbard. He's a C tier starter for us this week. Somebody that he is definitely a start because when you're looking at the matchup, playing the Jacksonville Jaguars, who gave up the second most amount of points to running backs last year. So a good defensive matchup for Chuba. And Rico Dowdle, we're going to have in the I tier as well. Somebody that we're going to say sit, I think, for this week because I really don't want to plug Rico Dowdle in my lineups. He's not really in a position at this point in the fantasy season, you don't really need to start Rico Dowdle because nobody's going to have depth issues yet. And so good matchups all around here because Carolina actually was first in allowing points to running backs last year in fantasy football. And so Travis Etienne, we have as an F tier start. He's going to be our top running back. We have Tank Bigsby in the G tier, and then we have Bashal Tutin in the H tier as well. And so 3 running backs here because, of course, we don't know how this is going to be divvied up. It is a great matchup for them to start the season. It looks like it's going to be Travis Etienne as the starter, but again, in terms of start, sit, meh, verdicts here, I would say Travis Etienne is somebody you can flex, so I'd say start. Tank Bigsby, somebody I'd say meh, and Bashal Tutin this week I would give as a sit verdict in this matchup. Going to the Vegas Raiders and the New England Patriots here, Ashton Jeanty is somebody we're going to have in the A tier this week. It is a good matchup for Jeanty in his first game. When you're looking at New England last year, New England allowed the 8th most points to running backs. Now, it is a completely different team, and so we don't know what that's going to look like. And so we need to take all of last year's data in terms of fantasy football, allowing points to certain positions with a grain of salt. But I do think right now it looks like a decent matchup for Jeanty, and Raheem Mostert's not going to be ranked this week. And then on the other side of the ball, Ramondre Stevenson we have in the F tier for this week, and then Travion Henderson, who is technically second on the depth chart. We have him ranked higher because we think he might end up having more big play upside, having more touchdown upside than Ramondre Stevenson, even in week 1. And so even though he's second on the depth chart, actually he's third in the depth chart, technically, he is our highest ranked Patriot for this week. I think that's all coach speak. I think it's all gibberish, and I think I'm comfortable starting. So I'm going to say Ramondre Stevenson is meh. I'm going to say Travion Henderson is a start this week. You drafted Travion to start him. I think you've got to start him this week in fantasy football. The matchup is, all yellow lights for this matchup for the Patriots. And so all across the board, it's just a blank slate. You're going to start Travion Henderson, in my opinion, in fantasy football in week 1. The Arizona Cardinals and New Orleans Saints. The Saints gave up the 5th most amount of points to running backs last year in fantasy football. James Conner is going to be a start for us this week. He's in the C tier. Trey Benson, I'm going to give as a sit for this week just to kind of wait and see what his role there actually is. We do have him in the G tier, and so he could be somebody that we're starting in coming weeks. On the other side of the ball, the New Orleans Saints playing the Cardinals. The Cardinals as well, that didn't have a great defense against the run last year in terms of fantasy points, 11th most fantasy points to running backs last year. And so those guys, Alvin Kamara and Kendre Miller. Kamara is, of course, a B tier start. We are going to start him this week. Kendre Miller, we have ranked in the I tier. He is the running back 2 there, and who knows, he could get red zone touches. He is the running back 2 on the depth chart now. In terms of what my expectations are for him in week 1, I would probably sit Kendre Miller in week 1 just to be safe. We don't really know what it's going to look like there just yet. Going to Pittsburgh and the New York Jets here. Caleb Johnson, Jalen Warren, 2 guys that we're looking at starting here. Not going to put Kenneth Gainwell on here. Not really buying the depth chart stuff. Not great matchups for either of these teams. Both of these teams were pretty solid against the run last year. So Caleb Johnson we're going to have as the F tier, as well as Jaylen Warren in the F tier. We're going to put these guys in the same tier until we figure out what they're... and week one's going to tell us a lot about these guys, right? It's going to tell us a lot about these rookie running back rooms like the Patriots, like the Steelers. And so Caleb Johnson, Jaylen Warren, no exception to that. We'll put them in the F tier for week one. And then the New York Jets, we'll go... Breece Hall we're going to put in the C tier. I mean, he's the starter there. I know there's going to be some conjecture about that. He's the starter there, and he's going to be the guy that gets probably most of the valuable touches there. Braylon Allen's a G tier guy. Braylon Allen's a guy I'm going to say sit this week as well. So start for Breece, a sit for Braylon Allen. And then the New York Giants, Washington Commanders here. Tyron Tracy, D tier. When you're looking at the matchup for this one, it's not bad. I would say the Giants actually have a better run defense against fantasy running backs than you would think. It looks like the Commanders have the tougher matchup here. But Tyron Tracy here. D tier starter for us. We're going to say start for Tyron Tracy. I think he's a good flex this week. Devin Singletary, not ranked. Cam Skattebo, who's technically the running back 3 on the depth chart, G tier. And so I'm going to say Cam Skattebo's a meh this week. Tyron Tracy is a start. On the other side of the ball, again, this is a good matchup all around for Washington because Vegas implies that they're going to score a lot of points in this game. They're playing the New York Giants, who allowed the 4th most points. I actually misspoke. They allowed the 4th most points to running backs last year in fantasy football. And so the problem is, of course, we don't really know in this running back room how it's going to be divvied up. Here's how we're going to rank them for this week. 2 guys in the F tier, Austin Eckler and Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt, both the guys that sat in the last preseason game. We assume they're going to be running with first team, both of them. We don't know which one yet. I'm going to say Austin Eckler, start. Ja'Cory Krosky-Merritt in the F tier, I'm going to say meh. I know we have them in the same tier. I feel more comfortable starting the veteran in week one. And so I'm going to go Austin Eckler as the guy that I want to start out of that running back room. And we'll see after week one. Again, we'll learn a lot about that room as well. Tennessee, Denver. Right now, Tony Pollard is in the D tier for us. Matchup-wise, not a bad matchup for him. Julius Chestnut is the running back 2 there. We don't have him ranked. Tony Pollard, I think, is somebody that you are definitely starting this week. Julius Chestnut, somebody that you are sitting. And then J.K. Dobbins. Between him and Harvey, we actually have Harvey ranked in the D tier this week and J.K. Dobbins ranked in the F tier. When you're looking at the matchup, not a bad matchup. 10th most points. Tennessee gave it the 10th most points to running back last year. Implied total points from Vegas in terms of the Denver offense, they project Denver to score quite a few points in this game. So it is a good matchup from a Vegas standpoint for the Denver Broncos. So I do think you want to be starting RJ Harvey. I'm going to say start. J.K. Dobbins, I'm between meh and start. I'm going to go meh. I think J.K. Dobbins J.K. Dobbins looks like the starter in week one. I lied. I'm going to go start for both of these guys. I think they're both solid flex option in week one. So start for J.K., start for R.J. Harvey. I think they're both guys you can plug in flex spot. And again, a great matchup to start so you can kind of figure it out while we wait. San Francisco, Seattle now. Christian McCaffrey we're going to have in the S tier, of course. No question about it. Not a bad matchup for them, but it's Christian McCaffrey. He's going to be in the S tier until further notice. Brian Robinson, we have, of course, in the I tier. Again, we don't think you're able to start B-Rob. He's a sit for us, of course, and I don't think you're going to be plugging him into your lineups anytime soon unless something happens to Christian McCaffrey. On the other side of the ball, actually a decent matchup here for the Seattle Seahawks. San Francisco was not good against fantasy running backs last year. And so Kenneth Walker, C tier, start. Zach Charbonnet, G tier, meh. I don't really want to start Charbonnet in week one, but he could end up being somebody that is productive if he does have a touchdown or two. Again, I think Kenneth Walker right now is the guy there until further notice, so we'll put him in the C tier this week. It's a good matchup for him. He's definitely a start. We're looking forward to that matchup. Detroit, Green Bay. Fun one to open the season here. When you're looking at Jahmyr Gibbs, we have him, of course, in the S tier. And then David Montgomery, one of the highest-ranked running back 2s in fantasy football, we have him as the D tier. Both these guys are starts for this week. I'm comfortable starting both these guys against Green Bay. The matchup's not bad, not good. It's right in the middle of the pack for the Detroit Lions. And then Green Bay. Josh Jacobs will have in the A tier. Not a great matchup. When you're looking at the Detroit Lions, they gave up the 3rd least amount of points to fantasy running backs last year. But it's Josh Jacobs you draft in the 2nd round. You're starting him no matter what. It doesn't matter. Emmanuel Wilson, is assuming he's the running back 2 there, is not ranked in our rankings this week. So we'll see. I mean, Vegas implies that Green Bay is going to score quite a few points in this game as well. And so we'll see how this one ends up going. But both the Lions running backs I'm comfortable starting this week. Let's go to Houston and the Rams here. The Houston one's another interesting one where we have 3 running backs ranked here. We've got Nick Chubb in the G tier, Dameon Pierce in the H tier, and Woody Marks in the I tier. That projects right now. Nick Chubb is the running back 1, Dameon Pierce is the running back 2, and Woody Marks is the running back 3. Matchup-wise, fine matchup. Vegas points-wise, not great. They're not projected to score a ton of points in terms of their Vegas implied points for this week. I would say Nick Chubb's a start. Dameon Pierce and Woody Marks are sits for this week. And then Kyron Williams, Blake Corum. Kyron is a B-tier guy. It's not a great matchup again on that side of the ball either. The Houston Texans allowed the 8th least amount of points to running backs last year. Blake Corum's not ranked on this, so it's just going to be Kyron until further notice. He's a B-tier guy, and we do have him as a start this week. Baltimore and Buffalo, a high-scoring game. We're going to be starting a lot of running backs here. Derrick Henry, S-tier start. Again, this is against a Buffalo defense last year that allowed the 3rd most amount of points to running backs. The Buffalo defense did. Pretty good matchup for Derrick Henry in week 1. He's a must-start everywhere, no matter what you did. Justice Hill's an H-tier guy, as well as Ray Davis. I'll go ahead and throw Ray Davis in there. Both these guys are sits, and they're going to be in the H-tier. I'm not really super comfortable starting either of those guys in week 1. James Cook is a C-tier guy. Tough matchup because Baltimore allowed the 7th least amount of points to fantasy football running backs last year, but you still start James Cook. He's in the C tier. He's definitely a start for this week. And then Aaron Jones in the last matchup here, Minnesota and Chicago. Aaron Jones is in the D tier. DeAndre Swift is in the D tier. Now, Aaron Jones has the better matchup. Minnesota, when you're looking at, they're playing Chicago. Chicago allowed the 7th most amount of points to running backs last year. Swifty has the bad matchup here. Minnesota was very good against the run last year. Obviously, the Brian Flores defense there. They're both still in the D tier, though, but both guys you're going to be flexing. I'm going to say start for both those guys. Jordan Mason, I'm going to say meh for week 1. I'm not really sure what his role is going to be. He's got him in the G tier, but it is a good matchup for him. Roshan Johnson, we don't have ranked. He's going to be a sit for us this week. And that covers all of our games for running backs. And so, if you enjoyed the video, if you enjoyed the format of going through every matchup and ranking these guys as we go, please drop a like and make sure you're subscribed because we're going to have this for you every single week. And in my opinion, this is the most simple way to go through. By the way, full rankings, we've got them up right here if you want to look at the full rankings. I know a lot of you guys just skip to the end. I would encourage you to watch the video so you can hear our verdicts on each of these guys. But got the full rankings here for you at the end of the video as well. If you enjoy, though, we appreciate it if you drop a like and subscribe. Good luck in week 1. We'll have the wide receiver version of this video coming out tomorrow. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you later.